This is so funny. Being parent is a hassle.
Okay. Well, I was just saying.
Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. Today we're back again, and I'm so glad for everyone who is joining back in and everyone who's just staying in here because this conversation is about to be a good one. So on the last video, a lot of you guys were having a lot of questions, and of course there's the aspect where I do talk too much, you know, women, but needless to say, so I got my husband to come back on set with me again so that we can talk about the suitcase member of the family or the always have to go kind of partner. This is just to weigh on like his emotional feeling of just being away from home. The last videos we've done, it was just about like me being the person who stays at home, and I think it's because I had a lot of unburdening to do. But yeah, without further ado, Cyril. So like I said, many were asking, like,
Yes, and
what
is
is
it like
really it is like to be the person who always
to be the person who
home.
goes? Well, I mean,
Yeah.
in one sentence, not very easy, but I mean that could also describe what it's like to be the person who stays. Obviously, it's also not very easy. Mentioned in previous videos, I'm a humanitarian emergency aid worker. That doesn't mean this kind of volunteering tourism aid or that sort of thing. This is professional humanitarian response for actual disasters, so man-made and natural disasters.
Yeah.
Well, I was about to say supernatural. But this is a professional scenario. It's, if you're wondering who am I talking about, we'll just go see MSF's Médecins Sans Frontières website or the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, any other major aid organization like Oxfam, Care International,
Okay.
and so on. So basically, when I go out, there are three levels at which I'm dealing with, I guess you could say, stress. So first of all is obviously leaving the family. The second is then the actual work itself, all the various unusual problems that it typically throws up. It's not like a normal job where you're in 9 to 5 job where you're going home in the evening and where you're typically living on base. So, and then plus you're directly often with the, as we call them in the humanitarian aid sector, the beneficiaries, I mean the people who you're actually serving, providing the assistance to. Just the living conditions themselves can be quite stressful, so often just because they put you into a situation of extreme monotony, plus the fact that you often live with your colleagues. So when you're, especially on a field mission, so you've got the same set of people 24 hours a day.
Yeah,
and I mean, your local staff might come in the morning and leave in the evening, but then you have any other expatriate staff, for example, will be there with you around the clock. Yeah, so it's those three levels: family, the work itself, and then actually your living conditions that are sort of weighing on.
I think let's start from family.
Yeah.
And then being at work now, like family, because family is where you live to go to work.
Yeah.
And then the work is now where you have to stay. And emotion, the coming back part of reconnecting back to family again.
Well, I suppose.
It's like a circle.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit, yeah, so I suppose it's the way to. It's a kind of circle. So obviously, when you're out, you have these. It depends on the mission. I mean, if it's a quite a serious emergency, then you'll have these mandatory R&R periods. It's rest and recuperation.
Which is.
And that can vary from. I mean, typically minimum 1 week they give you. The cycle. Every 4 weeks you go out again, and then come back, spend 1 week out, and then come back, and then the next 4 months after that. You go out again, or if it's when I was with Oxfam, it was every 8 weeks.
So after every 8 weeks,
you go out for a week. Yeah.
For a week.
And you can always add some of your because you also have your leave typically.
Yeah.
You can add some of your leave to that to make the R&R period a little bit longer. So that's when you're trying to reconnect directly with your family, obviously.
Yeah.
And when you're in the field, you've got obviously the IT to help you out. So Skype, WhatsApp, because normally we even in very remote locations, they'll have set up some kind of a satellite link, for example, so you have a connection to the outside world. You just don't have, like when I was in South Sudan, there were no phone lines where I was, because I was literally in the middle of the country in in a rebel-held area, so all the phone lines were cut, but we had a satellite link, so you can get internet, and it's obviously essential for doing the work itself also.
Yeah.
So on a daily basis, you are connecting with the family, but it's it's not a. There's only so much you can kind of communicate often down even in a video call. So, and then you're dealing, like I said, you've got the stress of the day, the activities of the day you're dealing with, and sometimes it goes, very late, or you're just exhausted.
Basically, I think at the same time, what my husband has always told me is, in some job position or post, there's no social life at all.
Well, I mean, there's a kind of a social life, but again, it's your colleague, so either you have to.
Yeah.
it's
Like not a
critical
social life like on the outside.
But yes, I mean, you don't have
of work
an
and
external
stuff.
social life.
Yeah.
I mean, in some cases,
Because
it's
in a
just,
security
the
purposes
security
and-
situation, or there isn't anything.
Okay.
I mean, when I was in South Sudan, you were literally living in a village. So, I mean, we would have some of the other aid workers would come over and visit us sometimes. They would come over, and for some reason they liked our compound. I don't know why, but to me they were all the same, more or less.
So I think you tell us about like how, because like when we were talking in the other video, I spoke about feeling like being abandoned all the time.
Yes, I mean.
So like tell me like how does it feel for you to be, or tell us, because now you're right here. How does it feel like to be the person who has to go away? Because I think for me the most part I got was this strong man who just leaves and comes back, and it took a long time. I had to put myself in your shoes to process like how it feels like for you.
I mean, when you're coming back, obviously so you just gone out on a mission and you come back to the first R&R, then obviously the first leave or whatever. I mean, you're very excited to see everybody again, and but then obviously you have to leave. So I mean, after the first, depending how long the leave is, I mean, after the first couple of days, then I always get this awful feeling of dread. The days are like kind of this countdown to having to leave again, and then you've also got to stock up on a few items that you need to take to the field with you, just personal items and so on. So you're kind of running around. You're slipping back into this work mode slowly. I mean, inevitably. I mean, not voluntarily. It's just you have to do it. You're checking your flights are still okay, and the security situation is still okay, and you can come back in. Everybody at the other end knows when they need to receive you at the airport, and your field team and so on. So you're kind of slipping back in, and it's just that sort of dread that, okay, I've got to separate from home, the children and Nelly, and then and go back into all the you're also preparing yourself for the stress again, like I said, the peculiarities of this work,
even the environment itself,
and of course the environment itself. So I was in Iraq on the last mission, so you're always worried about basically the political situation, the simmering
even in Somalia
conflict there. Well, I mean, in Somalia you're always worrying about either just various things like Al-Shabaab is always lurking in the background, planning something, and the pirates they weren't really active when I was there during that phase, but they're still in the background. There, various things going on. I mean, it's you can't assume it's that you have to kind of project that any number of things are possible. So you're always thinking about what may be the situation. You're always also worrying about the transport. You always wonder, are these aircraft and various things going to hold up? So all these things running through your mind. So in a way, I mean, you have to kind of I suppose numb yourself. You get to sort of there's a kind of a survival mindset where you're just like, it's a bit like just switching on a machine. You just switch yourself on, but you're just thinking of basically everything in steps. So I've got to leave now. Where do I need to go? What do I need to pack? Get to the airport, and the next steps, and next steps, and next steps. So that kind of keeps you focused on just this very, this logistics, very matter-of-fact things. And so I find that I would sort of block out my personal emotions about leaving. So when obviously everybody else here at home is probably, their emotions are bubbling up. And then I go, and then if I get to the airport sometimes, then, that's when you sort of, your emotions about the family come back, missing them. Or when you get to the field or something. I mean,
Yeah.
often I find that somebody else's family situation that's gone in a difficult direction or something, then it pokes. That's when my emotions can come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you've been poked from a different direction, so your emotions come up in unexpected places often. I mean that's kind of a standard thing for me, and I think probably for some other people.
Yeah.
So it's actually because you suppressed your emotions earlier, so they're popping up. Something's triggering you to react.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask you, like, how is it being the person who, sorry to jump you like from now home to work, but how is it like being the one who, like being the fact that you stay away from home the whole day, the whole night, the whole day, the whole night for a certain amount of period? Like, how does it feel like? Like, how did you find it? Like, do you just get used to it, or is it just hard all through, or?
Well, you kind of get used to it, but you're never really. It's never you're never really comfortable ever, because like I said, you're worrying about the family back home. You're worrying about the work. Is this individual tasks, are they going to, are they going to be successful or not? And then of course the security situation or the environmental situation. If it's raining or earthquakes or whatever. I mean, I was once sitting in the building in Iraq, and it starts. I see the window shaking, and then I look at the. Then I suddenly.
Really sad.
And then I suddenly feel the
it.
my sofa. So I'm sort of slowly moving like this on the sofa, and I'm like, oh my god, it's an earthquake. So because we were near the not so far from the Iranian border where the mountains are, so hence there's earthquakes. So, but it was only a slight tremor, but I was in quite a high building actually, so it was just gives you the creeps. And there's been earthquakes, they have them regularly. I mean, they have bigger ones. So so all these kind of things happening in the background, it just leaves you in a constant state of turmoil, and you're also monitoring, like I said, you're trying to via Skype or WhatsApp, trying to stay connected to the family and help as much as possible. But you're always like jumping in at some time which may not be convenient for them sometimes, or they're jumping in, to make a call when it's not convenient for you, and you're on some other problem. I mean, for example, you can be in a proposal writing stage, and it's like 14-hour days. You're not going to sleep, and there's no time to talk.
Yeah.
Because the thing about this work too is that we're always perpetually under resourced. I don't know what the public's view of this work is, but we're always chronically under resourced. There's always too few staff, too few, just everything. So because it's quite expensive. I mean, you go to these places, you have to set up from set yourself up. There's the agency has to provide a lot of its own infrastructure and so on. So it's logistics costs can be terrible. So
I think the other point, like,
I mean, so it reduces the overall what you can do sometimes. So so you're in this. You're saying, you're in this constant. What does it feel like? You're in this constant state of kind of simmering tension, and you can have panic attacks or sleepless nights. Your mind just can't switch off. I mean, I try to do a bit of exercise then, before I used to sort of drown myself in, like, paradoxically, the news. I'd have put Al Jazeera on or something. But after a while, that becomes like you lose. It further, after a while, it actually doesn't distract you anymore. It actually sometimes leads to the tension, because they'll be covering Iraq or something where you are, and then you're like, oh God, this is going to happen. So then I stopped watching the news. I mean, at one point when I was in South Sudan, I got back to the base, and I never turned I was in the capital so there was we had TV even in the field, but anyway, I never turned the TV on once. I just literally, I did my work and just hid myself. I didn't look at the outside world or anything. It was just focused on the work and so on. So you kind of go through phases also. I mean, then also when it comes to and simply phases like when you're missing your family, because initially you're always very enthusiastic when you're staying in touch, you're calling, you feel, those kind of normal feelings. But then as I said in the previous video, that sometimes you get a kind of a sense of frustration comes in because there's only so far you can go on a video call and so on. And so also just the more tired you get, you have this kind of this creeping sense of disappointment because you're not able to fulfill what you want to fulfill in the interaction, with the family. So that becomes a kind of other source of stress. So you're always kind of juggling how you diffuse one. You suddenly realize one thing that was a source of de-stressing becomes a source of stressing. So you juggle around, you try and find something else that will will sort of compensate then or act as the source of distressing. I mean, one thing I never use in the field is alcohol. One thing I never, just a slight interruption here. One thing I never resort to in the field is the use of alcohol because I just find it's just a complicating factor. If for no other reason that you're always on call as a manager because I manage these operations, so you can't be inebriated anyway. I kind of feel. From a professional point of view, as well as just also in front of your staff, because if you're, like I said, living on the base and you're not your best because of alcohol, it may undermine your authority. Obviously, when you're in countries where alcohol is not socially acceptable, then it's clear what you should and should not do anyway. But yes, that's one thing. Some people do resort to alcohol, unfortunately. I mean,
I think it kind of quenches
it's an easy thing to go to because you don't have to make much effort, right? You just fill the glass and you start drinking. I think that's why it's kind of an easy go-to, de-stressing solution. A lot of people like to drink socially, for example. So, I mean, it's not that it's a disaster every time by any means, but it just for me, I don't find it a useful way to cope with these situations. I try and do a bit of exercise, for example.
So what kept you going through the time, like when you were away? Like how do you cope?
Well, that's the easy part. Yes, of course. I mean, I'm always thinking of all of you, so that's the thing that keeps me going. Because typically there's a deadline for the project, so it could be, you're on a 6 or a 9 month contract or something of the sort. So it's not, the timelines aren't that, challenging as such. I mean, the time goes actually quite quickly because you're so busy all of the time. Mm. But the thing that at moments of when the whole situation just starts dragging on you, certainly the one thing that gets me through in the end is just focusing on returning home, basically. For that R&R as well as the eventual end of that mission.
Okay.
Because
which is why I was thinking, in the morning I was asking you, like, what is home to you? Because I've always thought, like, is home really like a physical place with a family, or is home like where you feel happy and stuff? Because some people have this tendency of you go to a place and then you can make it home. You understand? Yeah. But did you ever feel like that, like when you're at work, you're somehow at the second home or something?
No, I mean only when I didn't have a family. Because then it's much easier, in a way. It's easier to do this work up to a point. When
you didn't have a family.
When you don't have a family at all, because you could, and that's how it is kind of in the early stages. I think when you're in this career, you're more focused on the work, so you don't. You have that kind of fulfillment in the work itself. So it's not really. I mean it's that, but after a while, even that wears off because like I said, the context is still very. The working environment is still very stressful. So and meeting the sometimes extremely difficult objectives of the work. Even having a family actually makes the work a bit easier because it just keeps you there's a kind of if you like, a kind of absolute objective, if you like, which is something you can't, how to put it, you can't sort of stray away from, which is obviously your family.
Okay. And
Because anyway, you don't want to stray away from it. That's the point. So it kind of keeps you focused in that regard. It helps you not to take too many risks, obviously, and in the field and so on. You tend to measure what you do by, as well as also your staff. I mean, it keeps you focused on your staff too. That they also have families, so you don't want to put. I mean, we put them in an unnecessary level of risk, if at all possible, because yeah, I mean, you can relate to them.
another thing I wanted to ask is, like we had, for example, moments when, because the main point is not just work, but long distance relationship itself. Wow. Yeah. So, like for example, we've had moments when I was in the hospital, admitted after giving birth, and you had to leave and go and attend to some other important things in our life and relationship and stuff. And there were other times when, for example, I was giving birth and you had to just come for the birth period. And I remember that was like after you'd been away like for a long time during the pregnancy and stuff. And especially because it was really like a tough pregnancy. Like, how does that feel like for you, like when you have like your wife and this new baby and you still have to in two occasions basically you have to kind of, when you have a child, it's kind of like a new life has begun and there's that joy and happiness and everything. But when you have to like separate from that and put that aside, like pack that feeling and put it aside and just go and soldier on and go back to work, like how does that, how did it, like, is it an easy transition, or like is it hard? Do you struggle with that, or like
Yes,
it's
I
just
mean,
like
it's not easy at all
you
because
gotta do what you gotta do?
because you're leaving at a time where like after the birth of the children, where you're all quite vulnerable in whatever way. You're exhausted from the pregnancy, and the child is new. You just needs observation basically to see that it's
And
the
even
baby
just
is.
to connect with the family.
Yeah, I mean, there's all of that, just also to connect with the new baby and so on. No, I mean, I find that particularly stressful. I mean, has actually been the worst period for me, being away when Nellie has been pregnant, and then also having to go before I felt it was really safe to do so. I mean, that was quite tortuous because there were various complications that Nellie post. I mean, the last pregnancy was quite rough, and the birth itself was okay, but she had postpartum, post birth complications, which are quite serious. So it was incredibly nerve-wracking, I found. I mean, it was, she was in. It's not an exaggeration to say that she was in danger due to the situation, but fortunately it turned out okay. But I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to go through that again for anything.
And you're back.
So, yes, I mean, we're talking about the birth,
the
birth. So
babies
it's situations where I'm needed actually at home like that. I mean,
And you
it's
can't be
very,
there.
I can't be there. It's really, those are actually the worst. I mean, not being able to be there, even just under normal conditions. I mean, if things had not been going in a bad direction, would have been, unpleasant enough. But then when things are, medically not good, it's the worst situation because you're trying to now manage the situation remotely. And she was in Nairobi in Kenya, and
I've also been here in Finland by myself.
no, but not having childbirth complications.
Yeah.
There are risks that they quite many risks they faced in Nairobi that were to some extent worse because I wasn't there, but yeah, so that was also quite excruciating.
Yeah.
I'm rather relieved that they're now no longer at least facing those risks, so it made my last mission a bit easier in that respect. Took away one level of stress.
Is there any other thing that comes to your mind that as being the away couple.
Oh well, yes. Also, just I mean, yeah. I mean, I was talking about the risks. I'm worried about the risks you face. I don't tell you about the risks that I face because I don't want to. I don't want to worry you. So
Wait a minute.
I didn't. There were plenty of risks that I faced, in the field that I didn't want to. I had to kind of just sit on. I couldn't talk to you about because, for example, in Iraq, there was we had ISIS in the background as well as in just the standard transportation risks you have like on the roads and so on, and then of course there was the geopolitical, the wider issue between that started off with the Iranians and the Americans that always affects Iraq when that happened. That started when I was there. Like when I was in that field base in South Sudan, one of my local South Sudanese staff comes in and says there's a teenage girl who was shot through the pelvis with a Kalashnikov because it was one of these they have these revenge attacks between families when one family's done something to another family, so she accidentally got in the way and she was shot through the lower pelvis. It missed all her vital organs, but obviously you don't really want to be shot through the pelvis. So she raced in to say that this has happened and she's trying to find a flight because there was a small runway where the aircraft used to come in to supply us. I mean, it's the only way to get in and out of that place. There were no roads to that field location. You can only go in by air. In and out by air. So, you have to deal with those sudden, unexpected situations like that.
Yeah, I think just to wind up now, I think it's not easy like being on either sides of the prospects.
Yeah.
And I just want to say like you made a sacrifice of love even to be away, and still a sacrifice of love to because this is the job that you love. Yeah, you loved, so you as well made a sacrifice of love to just choose to let it be for now and come and be home and try and find something from home and stuff like that, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's not easy being away to try and manage IDPs and refugees and stuff like that, and then come home and still become an amazing dad and amazing wife and amazing husband, sorry, and to anyone as well who's going through the same thing. And so just sometimes you just have to find a balance and know like when it's the right time to really like leave the situation. And yeah, and thank you so much. Thanks for sharing things as well. It really means a lot to me. Yeah, it really does. It means a lot. Yeah, because there are many things we really, when you're in a situation, especially like in a long distance relationship, we tend to think about the person who's away and you, the one staying, is always the victim. Yet in this aspect of relationship, puts both of you as the victims to the whole situation itself. If you're in a long distance relationship, I hope that soon the situation allows you to be with your loved ones close to you. I hope that once this is all cleared, you are able to still work out the relationship and maintain it in a loving and caring manner that it used to be before. And yeah, what would you tell someone in your situation right now? Like maybe stuck at work or still thinking whether is it, because at the end of the day I think something has to give in the long distance relationship.
Yes, and that's what I was saying about
and a sacrifice has to be made at the end of the day. In our situation it was work basically, and also like being that Kenya was not, you were not yet a Kenyan citizen.
Well, I mean,
so there's also that
yeah, I mean, I didn't have it's not, I mean, that's a whole other topic. I mean,
yeah, so just comment down below and we'll be sure to try and discuss some of the things we've gone through trying to handle that.
It depends where everybody is in their relationship. I mean, I would say try and persevere if at all possible.
You're going to... This is so funny. Being parent is a hassle.
Okay. So,
Anyway, guys, so is there anything else you have to say?
well, I was saying that kind of relieved is kind of over what's past is past.
And what the future is yet
So
to be
yeah, somehow
amazing.
we managed to survive all that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only learning point. Not the only learning point, but a learning point would be that try and look beyond the immediate situation. So if you're in some tough scenario with the family,
Yeah.
away from home, whatever, try and see
I think
try
the
and
most
imagine
important.
a situation after this is all over,
Yeah.
which may help you to find a solution to get through it if that's what you're sort of you're having trouble finding. And I think we said in the other videos that having an end date to the whole process is pretty critical. And I mentioned that this endless long distance relationship thing it's a finite. There's a finite timeline because something's going to give at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So what gives when depends on how you approach the whole thing. So meaning what gives in a good way or a bad way.
And
but
I
some
think,
kind of compromise is going to have to be made. I mean, yes, because there are so many sad stories where people missed the opportunity to somehow
salvage whatever is
salvage
left
or retrieve
in family or reunions or anything like that.
retrieve the situation. I mean, it does require. I mean, I wouldn't say it's only about the person who's away. I mean, the people who are your spouse, or whatever, also has to kind of make an effort if they're going to save the situation. Also, it's not just down to the person who's away.
Yeah.
To find a way through, also, but basically, it's a mutual. It's a group effort. So it's the two people have to work on it.
Yeah.
Together to make it succeed.
Mm-hmm. And I think the most important part is like you both have to be understanding to each other, the person who's away and the person who's staying behind. And at the same time, with long distance relationships, some of it is because of different homes or countries of stay.
Yeah.
Because they're international couples, some of them are in interracial relationships and stuff. Some people are at work duty, posted to work in different countries, and we talk about military people, aid workers as you are, and stuff like that. And I think at the end of the day, it's very important and very vital to find a balance between the two worlds, where the other world is world and the other side is family. And at the end of the day, something needs to give. And like we mentioned in the previous video before, is I think it's very important to know when it's the time to run and when it's the time to hold on. And most importantly, I think you can't choose between, but if you have an option of choosing either or, then I think it's also important.
Yes, I mean, you have to be realistic, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
So, I could have said, well, I love this work so much, blah blah blah. But I mean, do you really love the work? I mean, you may be committed to your work. You may feel this is like the there's nothing else that can replace it. But then, well, what about your family? I mean, you built this thing up. It's not something you just pick out of a box off a shelf easily.
Yeah.
It's also a project that's been built up so over time. So, yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, if push comes to shove, you'd have to choose your family. I mean, basically, I did.
And I think another thing that
you just have to put it in your. In the end, I just put it set my mind up to thinking about it. That I don't know how I did it, but I basically just said I was really able, to let it go in the end.
Yeah.
Like not make it the be all and end all, just because. I once, felt like, well, it's not once, but I mean, I committed myself to it, the whole this area of work.
Yeah.
But you just have to kind of work on how to let it go.
Yeah, I think for me, I appreciate it and I love the work that you do, And even if as like now you can still choose to continue with it, I wouldn't really like mind it. But I'm just like, if there's an aid or someone who's amongst the policymakers at least watching this video or something like that, I think there has to be a point where organization become understanding that if someone has a family, then some organizations are good enough to allow to post you to a place where you can go with your family. But in cases where there's no like such privileges, I think they should be more understanding to make like R&R period like 2 weeks, or if there's family emergencies, the rules should be more flexible to manage
Yes,
such.
I mean,
You know, like paternity leave should be given to aid workers, for example. Not that you come, you help deliver for in that 1 week and then you're just gone. You know, I think both partners need to be. I know for women it's more different because they have to go and like physically give birth themselves, so the law allows them for such. But I feel like the men in the industry are most of the time ignored, because if you just have like 1 week to show up for R&R and your wife is supposed to give birth through this period, and whatever changes that happens in the process you're not able to participate and become a part of. So I think if there's a policy maker watching this, I think that's still really lacking. And at the same time, I think the safety of the people who do the work themselves, like the condition of the places they live in, for me those are the things that made our relationship even more I think hard, emotionally draining for us, because most of the time I'm home, might look like I have like a comfortable bed to lie on and he's away, and most of the time I don't actually cannot put into aspect the fact that he is maybe sleeping in a very terrible place, you know, suing, like peeing in like basically a pit using a pit latrine in this kind of a world we're living in right now. And so to think of that and then try and imagine what's happening with you at home, you're thinking if it's better, it could have been much more better if you know that your partner who's away is living in a comfortable place, even if they have to work, than knowing that they are away. You cannot put into context whatever they're going through. At the same time, to put into context that they're also living in a very, very miserable place. I think it's still, and most of the time this is because many people who work in the headquarters are the people who enjoy the life environment, I think. But people who are sent to the field where you have to set up and do everything, it's never like most of the time like not so comfortable. Like for example, we're talking about the Sudan situation. And yeah, so things like those are just so emotionally draining, and to think that you have to basically always have to watch your partner go out and come back home. You don't know where to meet them halfway. And I think at the same time, the other thing I would say is, if there could be like organizations who have like these counseling or therapy sessions for their employees before they come home, that also is really important, because the things that people go through in the field, that it's really hard to come and explain at home, because you don't want to put, and that is what because we've been just being unburdening after all this time, and the things I hear from the field are just like so horrible, some of them, and I can't even place myself in being there and trying to imagine how I would handle the same. But I think if they would have like, because you work for some good organizations, if they would work in means to ensure that their workers do get like counseling after they come from missions and stuff like that, it does help to just breathe, like just let it all out. Anyway, we hope you did enjoy this video. If you have not subscribed at this point, please do so. Subscribe, and please remember to share this video, like it, and yeah, we love you so much. And don't forget to subscribe, guys. It really means a lot. And if you don't mind, you can also tell us where you're watching from and who you are, and we just love all of you so much.